Hi, this lesson today is going to talk about lesson 8b2, which is on algebraic proofs. So a couple things about proofs. As we get started, when we do proofs, we always start with a given statement, and the reason is given. You go step by step, and you give a reason for each step, and you always end with what you're supposed to prove, and you give a reason for that. But the reason on that one is not prove. So in other words, you should always get at least 1 point on a proof because you should always be able to fill in at least one thing because it's given to you. They give it to you already. So here's some examples. We're going to start with algebraic proofs because they are kind of what we're familiar with. So notice that when we have a proof, we have this original problem, and actually it's usually over here that the original problem, and here's what we're given, here's what we want to prove. And so we just write that exact thing into the statement here as the first thing. The first thing is always you're given. And then we say, why do we know that? Well, because it's given to us. And we always want to end with whatever we're asked to prove. And so that what we do is we go step by step in the problem and we write down each step. So in other words, if I was going to solve this equation, we've been solving equations all year long. We know how to solve equations. If I was going to solve this, I might start with adding 18 on each side. And so when I add 18, I get 5x equals 3x plus 20. Okay, I'm going to write that, 5x equals 3x plus 20, right here. And what I'm going to do in the middle, like this middle part that I did where I added 18, why could I do that? Why could I add 18 to each side? Because we have a property called the additive property, or excuse me, the addition property of equality. And so that's my reason why I could do. How did I know this? Because the addition property of equality allows me to add to both sides. Okay, next I'm going to do minus 3x from both sides. And when I do that, I get 2x equals 20. So I get 2x equals 20. How do I know that 2x equals 20? Because I subtracted 3x from both sides. What property is that called? That's called the subtraction property of equality. And finally, now I'm ready to say x equals 10. How do I know x equals 10? Well, because I divided both sides. And if you divide both sides, that's called the division property of equality. So I basically just go through and solve equations like I've been doing all year long. But in this one, in the proof, I just have to say, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? And how did you know you could do that? Because I have a property for it. Let's try another one. This time our given is 6 times r plus 2 minus 4 equals negative 10. I'm going to write that right here. How do I know that? Because it's given. That is 1 point. On a quiz or a test, that's 1 point. You just have to write it down. That's easy. Then, whatever it says here, I'm going to put down here. Now, I do not put the reason as being proved. That is not a reason. I have to wait and see until I get it. Okay? But at least, like I said, this is a point. That's 1 point right there. Or this is a half a point. Okay, so we're there. Now what we want to do is we want to solve this equation. How do we solve this equation? Well, from my equation skills, I know I'm supposed to distribute this, and that gives me 6r plus 12 minus 4 is equal to negative 10. I'm going to write that down. 6r plus 12 minus 4 is equal to negative 10. How do I know that? Well, what did I do? I just distributed. We have a property called the distributive property of equality. So if I distribute, I write down here, distribute. What am I going to do next? I'm going to combine my like terms. And so that right there, that step where I added together my 12 minus 4 and I got 8, that's actually a property. And you could call it combining like terms, but you could also call it distributive property. So I'm going to write down that step, 6r plus 10 equals 6r plus 8 equals negative 10. How did I get that? Because I combined like terms. But combining like terms is also the distributive property. Okay, if I was going to solve this, what would I do next? I would subtract 8. So I get 6r equals negative 18. How did I get that? Because I subtracted. So we're just doing the problem. We're just explaining what we did. That's all we're doing. We're just explaining. And finally, wouldn't we divide by 6? And that gives us r equals -3. How do we get that? Because we divided. Now, we have this one last step, and this one's kind of tricky. We came up with r equals -3, but the proof was actually -3 equals r. Well, what did we do? How did we get from here to here? We must have used a property of some sort. We have to go back and look at our properties. There's a property that says we can switch this around, and that property is called the symmetric property. Symmetric property of equality lets us swap them around like that. Okay, let's turn the page. Okay, once again, easy point. We write this right here, the reason given. Another easy half a point. We write this right here. We do not write the word prove. Prove is not a reason. All I have to do is solve my equation. So I'm going to go through my steps. I'm going to solve my equation. So it looks like the first thing I need to do is distribute. Okay, when I distribute, I get this. I'm going to write this down in my line. And the reason I can say I can get that is because I distributed. All right, what will we do now? I would combine like terms. So on my calculator, what's 55 minus 27? I combined my like terms and I got 28z. And so I combine like terms, I'm going to call that CLT, combine like terms, slash distributive property. Those two properties are basically hand in hand. They're just backwards of each other. Okay, what do I need to do to solve? I need to add 36 to both sides. All right, when I add to both sides, I add 36. I get my calculator. Negative 64 plus 36 is negative 28. So now I have 28z equals negative 28. I write that down. And how did I get that? Well, because I added 36 to both sides. That's the addition property of equality. Last step, how did I get to z equals -1? Well, I divided by 28. If you divide by 28, that's called the division property of equality. Sometimes I've talked about this. Sometimes we can do some abbreviation like division, div, addition, add. But with subtraction and substitution, you can't, because subtraction and substitution both start with sub, so you need to be more specific. Okay, one last problem. Again, we want to distribute. So first, I'm going to write this in. Whatever I have here in the given, I write it down. I get a point. I write given. Whatever I want to end with, I put that down here. And I'm going to work my way and like fill in the puzzle steps, basically. So I distributed. And when I distributed, I got 82 plus x equals 5x plus 22 minus 8x. Well, what I need to do next? I think I need to combine like terms. My like terms are my 5x and my minus 8x. That gives me a negative 3x. So I want to write this down now. How did I get that? Well, I combined like terms, which is also known as the distributive property. Okay, I'm going to take a minute and look and see where do I need to get to? Because sometimes you have to look to see what your end goal is. So here's my end goal. I need my x on the left. If I want my x on the left, I have to move this one over. Oops, I'm going to put it under this one. So I get 82 plus 4x is equal to 22. All right, how did I get that? Because I added to both sides. If you add to both sides, you say it's the addition property of equality. Okay, I want to solve for x. I need to subtract my 82. So I subtract the 82. That's the subtract property of equality. Not just a sub, because sub could be substitution. So now I have 4x is equal to negative 60. Somehow I got down to negative 15. How did I do that? Well, I divided. So I don't put Sorry, let me finish this out. That's a x equals negative 15. I don't put given here or prove or whatever. I put division because that was my last step that I did. My last step was a division property. Okay, we're going to work on a lot with solving proofs, but these are really a good place to start because they're algebra and we know how to solve equations. And you're just explaining what step did you do, what did you do, what did you do, what did you do, and you just write down those steps in your reason column. We will work on this some more in class.